Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another edition of the Mandatory Live. If you're rocking with the show, thank you so much. But if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, like the video. And remember, you can also follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. And you can find us on the audio side as well. So keep that in mind. So if you're on, looking for your podcast, your shows, leave a rate and review because why wouldn't you give us a 5-star? Gervonta Tank Davis and Lamont Roach because they had their press conference earlier today. And there was just a ton of news that came out from this press conference. One of them being Gervonta Tank Davis saying he's going to call it quits after 2025. Your thoughts on this?
I've probably said this here before, but I never, ever, ever believe that a boxer is going to retire when they say he's going to retire. Outside of like certain instances that may appear obvious, but when it's somebody who's 30, give or take, and he'll be 31 at the time of his retirement, like I'm not buying that. I do think there's some truth to what he's saying in terms of like I buy that he wants to just step away and just kind of be low key. It doesn't appear like it, surprisingly enough to some people, maybe he doesn't appear like somebody who just wants to be out front and center, kind of like Floyd still tries to be, throughout the second half of his boxing career or life, so to speak, really his life. But I don't know about the retirement stuff. I mean, maybe, but if that's the case, that there's some fights that we got to see before he walks away. At least a
Well,
couple.
Tank doesn't fight 3-4 times a year. So if he's saying he's done after 2025, and the reason why I kind of believe it is because some guys they fight way too long, and then we see instances like what we saw with Triple G. Something that you don't want to see. You see something like Deontay Wilder, like you don't want to fight for too long. And if Tank was to say, "Hey, I'm going to retire and do it on my own terms," I would totally get that. And he also talked about going to therapy and how he wouldn't have like the same fire and all of that. So it would kind of change him if he was going to be boxing. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but some interesting stuff from Tank Davis. So yeah, let us know the comments below if you think Tank is going to retire. He is set to fight Lamont Roach. And Bryan, your thoughts on that fight, on Roach getting, a shot to fight Tank?
Look, a Lamont Roach is good, but this is another example of this happened with Hector Luis Garcia, taking a super featherweight champion who's moving up to the lightweight and is fighting for a title. And this one's going to be at Barclays Center, so I will do my best to be there covering it. And it'll be nice to have a fight back at Barclays Center. There hasn't been one in a long ass time. The last one, I'm not even sure there's been one since Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius, which is now 2 years ago at this point. I'm not sure there's been another one since.
That's crazy. One question before we, remove ourselves from the whole Tank conversation. If Tank was to retire by the end of the year and say Lamont Roach, let's just say
Oh, I
Lamont
forgot.
Roach was
The
oh,
Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia was at Barclays Center earlier
okay.
this year. But
Anyways.
since
Yeah.
then, yeah, that's it.
Anyways, if Tank was to retire, thank you for cutting me off there, Bryan. I know you wanted to get that information out. But if
Got to
Tank
be
was to
accurate.
retire, if Tank was to retire and he didn't end up fighting Devin Haney or Lomachenko or Shakur Stevenson or Teofimo Lopez, like whoever. Obviously, those guys are in different weight classes, but he could fight Loma, he could fight Shakur. What would your thoughts be on his career?
I mean, I'd be disappointed. He's an excellent fighter. It's a testament to how good he's been and how good we think he is that we want to see him fight all these dudes. And here's the thing, like this is a new generation type of deal. If you look at previous generations, like if you look at this is gonna sound like some old head shit, but if you look at some of the top pound for pound guys from like the 90s and 2000s, a lot of them fought one each other, two had losses, but three, like when they retire, there's not a ton of guys that you can be like, oh, they didn't fight this person. Like Roy Jones Jr. beat lackluster air quotes competition in his career because the weight class, you know, his weight classes just didn't have anyone who could touch him because he was that good. But like who are the guys you can be like Roy Jones Jr. ducked this person or avoided this person or didn't fight this person? There aren't many, barely any, right? Like if you look at welterweights in the 90s, like with Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, Pernell Whitaker, so on and so forth. Like if you're looking at some of these dudes, Bernard Hopkins later on at middleweight, who was a star obviously in the 90s, but also the 2000s where he really came to prominence after beating Trinidad. Like these guys fought legit dudes throughout their career. And as they exit the sport, there's not a ton of people who you can say they didn't fight this person. Manny Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto, even Floyd Mayweather, for all the shit he gets. Like you could parse through, hey, he didn't fight this person at this specific time. Like Felix Trinidad fought a later version of Pernell Whitaker, but like they still got in the ring with these people. They're like we didn't get Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, and we should have gotten it years ago. Like there's a lot of fights we're potentially missing out on. And today, this is noteworthy, but he dismissed Shakur Stevenson as somebody who's accomplished nothing in boxing. Where I mean, like their resumes aren't they're not like terribly far apart in terms of quality of opposition, things of that nature. Like Tank's been in our lives a lot longer, but Shakur Stevenson rose to prominence very quickly. And I think like that's a miss if he doesn't fight Shakur Stevenson. Like they kind of have to fight each other, I feel like.
Yeah, I just feel like I know how that fight would go. And I think Shakura would be running a lot. Like Shakur would not throw a lot in that fight. And that's exactly what Tank said. Like a lot came out from this press conference. I think they asked Tank, and I'm paraphrasing, about Shakur Stevenson, and Tank said, well, he hasn't really accomplished anything, and stuff like that. The one thing that I will say about Tank is I'd rather see him fight Loma. And the whole Loma thing wasn't his fault. Loma's the one that backed out of it and said he was going to take some time away. So that's not necessarily on Tank. The one thing that I will say that regardless if we're talking resumes or not, I think the one thing that Tank has over Shakur is he's actually entertaining to watch. He is a pay-per-view fighter. Like some people might not agree with that, but he does sell pay-per-view fights. Like people want to see Tank fight. He's exciting. I don't think Shakur or Stevenson has that under his belt at all. So I think that's the difference. And, people will always say, well, Tank never held a full world title. This was one of the comments from IMPK13, one of our friends of the show. I don't think Davis has
I don't think that's
ever held
true.
a full world title. He has had a title before.
Yeah, he had. I mean, I know what he means because technically, right now, he has like the regular WBA
Yeah.
title, but he had like the IBF featherweight or super featherweight. I'm forgetting. But when he beat Jose Pedraza, like that's a full world title. He's had full world titles, but I mean, yeah. But when we did a version of the Tank resume conversation, and we'll probably like re-up it as we get closer to the actual Lamont Roach fight, which is now going to be March. So that's 4 months away, actually. But when you do look through it, like you just want to see a little bit more. I don't think he's fought a bunch of trash fighters. I don't think boxers are trash in general, but like a lot of people would look at the resume and be like, who did he beat? And then, people who love Tank, and there are a lot of people who love Tank, would say the opposite and be like, look, he beat young lions, so to speak, like Ryan Garcia, like Frank Martin, like Rolly Romero.
Leo
But
Santa Cruz, who was a former champ, obviously moved up in weight to fight him. But to
Isaac
me, like I've
Cruz
always,
also, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like he's
Also
got
Mario
look,
Barrios at 140 pounds, which I like Mario Barrios. Some people may not be the biggest fan of his, but
we just named his best 5 wins and plus Jose Pedraza. So those are his
yeah.
best 6 victories. So I mean, you could do with that what you will, but to me, like I want to see somebody else top flight in there. And he and Shakur Stevenson have been kind of doing this dance. It's the new Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. It's
I
like
mean,
years of this.
people have been doing this dance with Tank for quite some time, but for me, I want to see him against Loma. I think that's far more of a exciting fight than him and Shakur. I don't think him and Shakur is ever going to get made. Nerd, a friend of the show, says Tank won't be mentioned with the all-time greats. And that's up for debate. Like leave your comments below, and also if you haven't checked out our little video that we put out about Tank's resume, make sure to go on our channel. We went through his resume and we talked about where we stack him up against other fighters, especially in that division. So make sure to go check that out. But we spent 10 minutes on Tank. and we have a lot to talk about,
Yeah.
Bryan.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
let's keep moving forward on this. We will revisit this topic, obviously, when we are going to be talking about Tank and Lamont Roach getting closer to that fight. But make sure to go check out that video when we talk about his resume.